Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could teach the gullible to never be so comfortable with lies they eat like comfort food? To disregard the bogus claims and pseudoscientific claims. Can you imagine just how much indeed the world would change? No more political predators playing on the populace, but ilkas and plots to shift and kill metropolis. No more villains with the title in the Bible, holding phony temper Bibles like the stuff they teach is vital. Imagine it was normal to have to prove a claim you make. And folks really feel ashamed to express some content that was fake. It's not to say we never make mistakes, it's just to say we go out of our way to show the evidence it takes.
Remain skeptical while you travel the road, the reason stay strapped with logic and facts. That's what it is, yo. Keep reality intact to help the truth grow. Question every claim, especially the ones you believe in. Remain skeptical while you travel the road, the reason.
Hey, welcome to Road to Reason, Skeptic's Guide to the 21st Century. I'm Rob Penzak. I'm a physician turned writer, founder of Saved by Science, and executive director for Atheist Alliance of America.
And I'm David Tamayo, president of Hispanic American Freethinkers. Although I was being challenged right before the show by Dr. Penzak here.
Yeah, I don't want to show off, but size does matter. If you take a look at the representative Hispanic American Freethinkers pins, I'm just saying, so it's not all that close today. So
he's got this pin that we pass out called, that says piensa, think. And today I'm barely bare today.
He's pinopenic today. So.
And so yes, for today you get to be president of Hispanic American Freethinkers.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to implement some just huge changes. Some great rules are coming up. Today we're going to be joined in about 15 minutes by Mark Gura. We're going to be talking about secular Buddhism. Until then, we're going to go through some announcements, some news, and then we'll cut back to Mark in a little bit. So you want to start us off with the first announcement?
Yes, I have an announcement somewhere in here well, there's several announcements, but one that we have Imagine No Religion coming, conference number 7 coming up, and I understand there's a certain Dr. Penzak, you might be related to him, who's going to be speaking over there.
I'm pretty sure I'm the lead speaker, but there are a couple other speakers that other people might be interested in.
So, well, I think we have there Dr. Richard Dawkins, and we have Dr. Lawrence Krauss, and Dr. Jerry Coyne, you know, those slackers in science, but I'm sure you guys are just making sure they don't starve to death.
I imagine so. No, so this should be really a fabulous conference. So this is going to be in Toronto, Canada, up June 2nd through 4th. One other person that's going to be speaking there is Chris DiCarlo. If you're interested in critical thinking, Chris has a new book coming out at that time, 6 Steps to Better Thinking, How to Have Heated Discussions and Still Get Along. This is very much in line with stuff that we do, you know, Road to Reason, Atheist Alliance, Street Epistemology.
Halfway really the same thing as with the critical thinking.
Right, so we're very excited to see this book come out, you know, critical thinking and how to have these conversations. If you're interested, Chris is also going to be doing a book tour, I think, right after June. So if you're somewhere on the East Coast and you're personally interested, or you're in a group that might be interested in interacting with him, get in touch with us through our Facebook page or the Atheist Alliance Facebook page, and, you know, we're happy to put you in touch and see if we can get him to come speak in your area. So
is this Imagine No Religion conference, is it mostly science-y people, or all kinds of
I think it's a mix. I think they do bring in some, you know, probably like artists in some ways, and, you know, that's like another thing that we're really interested in, is to get outside of this skeptical bubble. We really need to reach mainstream America, as our last election just showed us, to get critical thinking skills to everybody. So I think they do cover a variety of things out. I've never been to one before. I've watched a few presentations from some people that we know.
And in fact, the topic today will include you know, how other ways that we can reach out to other people that are either religious or other people that may be non-believers and really not even know that they're non-believers. Mm-hmm. So that's part of what we're going to cover with Mark also. I also have another announcement, and that is that the Secular Nation magazine is an outstanding magazine. You have a copy here.
I'm going to hold that in front of David. Yeah, there we go. That's you're welcome, Hypatia. This is your husband's new look.
It's an improvement. It's an outstanding magazine that I've read many times, and I highly recommend it. But really, the reason I'm bringing it up is we're looking for people to create, to write, to express themselves, and we know that this show is typically seen by people who already are skeptical and thinkers and that kind of stuff. And so there's, go ahead and feel free to contact Rob or myself or Facebook page for Atheist Alliance.
Right, so you can either go to the Atheist Alliance America Facebook page, or to Road to Reason, or through Half Free. Contact contact any of us. I'm happy to take a look at people's submissions. We are looking to get content. We have some published authors, some excellent people that do good work that everybody will be familiar with that are going to be writing for this. We're also happy to just look at content. If you're just an atheist, a secular person, an activist, an educator, get in touch with us. We'll take a look at the material.
Now, is there
make
anything
it into the magazine. December 5th is our first deadline, so you would want to get it in the next couple of weeks.
Anything off limits?
We're looking for anything for secular, skeptical, atheist, humanist, and scientific community. Anything in those general categories you can find in any ways.
It can talk about politics. It can talk about law. It can talk about all kinds of things.
Everybody can talk about anything. We think critical thinking should affect every facet of your life. So you're welcome to talk about whatever it is that you want, and we'll take a look and see if it's something to
make that connection. Yeah, and. Besides that, isn't there something else?
Well, I'm going to put a contest in there. So I recently did a program with Gavin Schmidt, who's the director for NASA Goddard Institute of Space Studies, and Baba Brinkman, Canadian hip-hop artist, who recently did an off-Broadway production of Rap Guide to Climate Chaos. So I'm going to get those people to judge a contest. I'm hoping to get interest. Two of our other people at Atheist Alliance. I'll put them on the spot here. So Tombstone to Dead Man's most recent album was The Sixth Extinction, and Phil Torres is a philosopher who wrote The End, What Science and Religion Tell Us About the End Time. So I think those four people would be a great perspective to look at climate change, ignoring it. So if you want to make some interesting videos or submissions that have to do with humanism and climate change, I'm going to post something about it in Secular Nation, and we're going to have a little contest to give out some awards.
It's definitely something that I highly encourage, especially young people that want to get involved. And I get a lot of emails from people saying, hey, how do I get involved? What can I do? This is a good opportunity to start letting your voice known. I mean, we see what happens if you stay home and you're quiet about things. Others will make decisions for you. And so this is a good way to educate others about your own opinions, your own feelings. And also, being a skeptic person yourself, you should be able to connect those things with evidence and be able to point things out to very logical steps.
And I'm going to throw in one extra announcement. So I got a book that's called The Jesus Delusion, How the Christians Created Their God. This one, I'm about 50 pages into it. It gives, the person that did this, I think, runs a science publishing company. They have a science background, and they really establish stuff in a very nice, methodical, serious manner. So if you're interested in whether Jesus was a historic figure, whether things have been extrapolated from that or not, and just sort of taking a very evidence-based approach to Jesus, it looks like a very interesting book. I'll comment more on this as I get through it.
Well, and this is brand new. This just came out. I just happened to see it before, and so today when you had it over here, you saw me. I was very interested in seeing the table of contents and seeing what it looks really good, and it's not prohibited. I mean, when you see a book that is thicker than the Bible, then you start kind of like, oh, do I have time for this? But it looks very good. I'm certainly going to be reading this book soon.
Yeah. And so this is by Heinz Werner Kubica, who's located in Germany. And take a look on Amazon, just see if it looks like something you're interested in. Take a look at the reviews there, and give us feedback if you get a chance to read it. Let me know.
If you read it, it looks from the table of contents, it seems pretty good. So how about if we talk a little bit about news? I really want to talk about one piece of news that we have today. In all the bad news we've received recently, I'm going to quote this one directly from Science News, which just arrived. So I'll just read it and test my English reading skills. The Federal Trade Commission issued a statement this month which said that homeopathic remedies have to be held at the same standard as other products that make similar claims. I mean, that's really big. So if it says it cures headaches, they better back it up. So in other words, American companies must now have reliable scientific evidence for health-related claims that their products can treat specific conditions and illnesses. So in the US and UK, drug companies have had to do this for the longest time, and they have to perform double blind studies and control groups and that kind of stuff. And so this is going to have to show whether or not this is superior to a placebo. If it's a placebo effect, they can't, for treating a condition, they can't claim that it does anything. So this new policy statement, called the Enforcement Policy Statement on Marketing Claims for Over-the-Counter Homeopathic Drugs, states that the case for efficacy is based solely on traditional homeopathic theories, and there's no valid studies using current scientific methods showing the product's efficacy. So therefore, if no such evidence exists, companies must state this fact clearly on their labeling, and also state that the claims based are only on ancient 18th century theories that are rejected by the majority of the scientific community. And failure to do this will be considered a violation of the FTC Act. I think this is the greatest news we've had here in a long time.
That is it. So this is a bitter pill to swallow for the homeopathic industry, but fortunately there's nothing in the pill, so totally safe. So that's awesome news.
I'm hoping that this will be something that gets enforced, and us as skeptics, we need to be looking around and making sure that things are being followed. If we notice that over the course of time, so we can report these people.
Maybe those little cups after the Olympics, we were talking about cupping and how that's all bogus, and millions of people saw Michael Phelps and all the others. Maybe on those little cups we'll say, this does not work. Please don't use.
All right, so we have Person of the Week.
Person of the Week. So we would love to award this to the Southern Poverty Law Center for their great work showing all the hate crimes that have happened in the wake of the new election. But we have a real difficult time doing that until they remove Majid Nawaz and Ayaan Hirsi Ali from their person non grata list.
They may have others also in there.
Yeah, and so you really lose your moral authority when you take people that are trying to reform and fix a dangerous system and label them amongst sort of the hate mongers. And so it's just
not the same thing.
Right, when things are too politicized or there's no thought. So again, we've
so who do we award it to?
I would like to join the crowd that's just talking about, take a look at what Southern Poverty Law Center, there's a petition going around to help get those Ayaan and Majid off that list, and take a look at it. So we're going to transfer to another non-person. When I was at the library this week, I was met by a couple of Jehovah's Witnesses out front. I did pick up this lovely book, What Does the Bible Really Teach? So it's not really what I was looking for en route to the library to meet religious people standing.
So you said the Jehovah's Witnesses are the people over there?
So no, so I wanted to give this to the library. So I did speak to the people in the library and actually got a call back later. And so the library is in this situation where they definitely want to and need to protect those individuals' First Amendment rights, and they're allowed to be out there speaking. At the same time, they need to get permits. They need to not be accosting people coming to the library, which these people weren't. They have to be a certain distance away.
They don't want the library to be used to proselytize.
Right. It's like, so if you're coming for education. So I really, I was very happy with the library taking it seriously and was looking at both sides and doing what they could. I do want to read from the good book. Here's a picture here.
That's
you
in
can see
color
it's very
pictures.
lovely for children in their impressionable ages. The lame will leap like deer. The eyes of the blind will be opened. All those in the memorial tombs will come out. No resident will say, I am sick. So, David, this is wonderful news that all.
So, if I'm a Jehovah's Witness, screw doctors. We don't need to go to no need to go to hospitals. No need to.
The healing is here and everything is fixed. This is the kind of stuff, on the face. We can look at every one of these claims and say this is ridiculous. People still die. People are still in wheelchairs. The blind still can't see.
How about amputees? Do they cure amputees? The lame?
We have not seen a whole lot of them magically fixed. But this lack of critical thinking spills over to every facet of life, including voting. So I think with that, we better go to a joke to lighten the mood. And
I got the joke, but perfect joke for today. The joke is on the news that we just had. It's on this bogus kind of thing. And so, did you hear about the man who forgot to take his homeopathic medicine?
I didn't. What happened?
He died of an overdose.
Bam. Now, we're going to go to break. I want you to think about that. That's much funnier than you might think at first as you think it through. We're going to take a public service announcement.
It's hilarious.
And we'll be back with Mark Gura in a couple minutes.
One of the goals of an atheist community is to provide support for those who find themselves without faith in light of mounting evidence against unfounded beliefs. Organizations with this goal range from skeptic groups to humanist service meetups to support groups for those who may have lost a community through their deconversion. In response to this, Recovering from Religion, an organization that seeks to support those who have left their faith, has recently launched the Hotline Project. This is not a deconversion hotline. The motive behind the project is to support a growing population of people who have left their faith and need to construct their identities around a new, beautiful reality. If you want more information, you can visit the Recovering from Religion website at recoveringfromreligion.org.
Good.
Homemade noodles. Oh. Marty, stop it. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. It reminds me, I've been thinking maybe we should try a new form of birth control. I heard about this one, it's called the IUD, intrauterine device. Or we could try the patch on your arm. Actually, I think that one goes on your butt.
Bedsider.org has birth control information and a lot more. And it's...
What do you think, then? Arm or the butt?
There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
This is Richard Dawkins. Doing commercials is unfamiliar territory for me, but I'm inviting you to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, on Fairfax Public Access every Sunday. Each week, the hosts tackle wishful thinking, religion, pseudoscience, and the harm they cause, with a combination of facts, humor, and community involvement. They challenge believers to defend their faith and give you, the skeptic, a voice. With live call-ins for viewers and streaming on the World Wide Web, there's never a dull moment. Don't wait. Look at them now on Facebook and YouTube, and remember to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, or there'll be hell to pay.
All right, welcome back to Road to Reason.
I don't know if it's me, but I love those announcements.
Yeah, can you roll some more PSAs? And we'll, no. So today, this is a real treat. We're going to have Mark Gura. Mark and I met at Road to Reason, and we have been fast friends and in constant contact since then. He is the vice president of Atheist Alliance of America. He's the host of Blind Faith Vaccine TV show, author of Atheist Meditation, Atheist Spirituality, and also executive director for the nonprofit Association of Mindfulness Meditation and Secular Buddhism. So Mark, it's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Rob and David. Great to be here with you.
I don't know, man. You sound like you're pretty lazy. All those organizations and all that stuff. Where do you find time to do so much? Thank you for being with us over here today. I think Mark and I met for the first time in Atlanta at Black Non-Believers meeting there sometime not long ago, and he and I hit it along pretty good. So when you mentioned him to me the first time, I was like, I know Mark. I had pictures and had pictures with him, and I couldn't remember his last name before, but now I can't forget it because it's Gura, like guru.
And that's no accident there. All right. So Mark, you have a fascinating history of your kind of journey from religion to non-religion. Before we get into the secular Buddhism, can you kind of walk us through your own evolution?
Sure. So yeah, after high school, I started to think about, I was still a Christian at that point, and I started to think about life and death and, what's it all about? What can I do with my life? And I decided to sell everything and travel around the world for a year.
Wow.
And meet all the teachers and stuff like that. And they turned into a 3-year trip around the world. And at the end of the trip, I became an atheist.
Oh, wow. So that's what we need to do. We wanted to remove dogma from the country. We got to send everybody outside the country.
So we need to fund roughly 6 billion people to travel around the world for 3 years and learn.
No, actually, I was. You're going to give Donald Trump some ideas there.
There you go. Actually, I was surprised that you say you sold your stuff in high school and were able to travel. If I would have sold my stuff in high school, I wouldn't have gone to the corner. I didn't. Wow. Okay. And so, what country had the most influence in you when you traveled around that made started making you question dogma?
Yeah, well, I did travel. I wanted to travel and did travel to all the places, where the religions started or kind of helped get started. So of course, Israel, Jerusalem, India, China, the Middle East. So upwards of 80 countries, or almost 80 countries at this point. And I think India had the greatest impact on me, and that's where I learned the meditation. And then I realized that meditation didn't have to be supernatural in nature.
Did you ever get into regular kind of theistic Buddhism before getting into secular Buddhism, or what's your history sort of with Buddhism, and then maybe with your meditation history?
Yes, I did consider myself a traditional Buddhist at one point, and believed in reincarnation. Realized that later, of course, realized that it's just silly to believe in something that one has no idea if it exists. and and started to wean myself off of that as well.
So why don't you tell us then, what's the difference between what I would call traditional Buddhism versus secular Buddhism? And because I know there are all kinds of Buddhisms. I mean, we were being schooled before the show by a young student over here who knew a lot more about Buddhism than we did from classes he'd taken. But what's the difference between the two, just on the surface, so we can start diving in a little bit?
Okay, now do you want me to go historical to present, or do you want me to just give you a...
Why don't you give us a little primer on traditional Buddhism, and then we can go into
and
secular.
then the difference.
Okay, so just to give you kind of an original idea of how it all started. So basically, this guy named Siddhartha Gautama, who was called a Buddha because Buddha is a title which means enlightened one and so on. He left his privileged life as a prince. He lived in India about 2,500 years ago, and so he basically he was a Hindu by birth, and as he started to study his religion, he realized that it wasn't fulfilling. There were all these gods and deities and all this kind of stuff, and so he started to try to search for how to find that inner peace, how to find that happiness that's not based on something external that changes, that stuff like that. And so eventually he figured out this psychological system of basically attaining a happiness that isn't based on something external or something mythological. And so as he started to teach this, as you can imagine, the Hindus around him, the Hindu religion was up in arms because all of a sudden he was teaching not to worship God. So he was one of the first atheists because as soon as he, quote unquote, became enlightened, he said, look, the answers aren't in worshiping gods. The answers are in finding, a psychological state of being within yourself that makes you happy, that makes you have a good, that helps you have a good life. And as that philosophy, that psychological technique, that meditation went around the world, everywhere it went around the world, it got mixed with the religion and culture of that country. And so eventually, that philosophy that went around to the West, and of course, Westerners who have been getting disenchanted with traditional Buddhism, Westerners such as myself, started to realize, well, wait a minute, some of the mixing that happened with the Buddha's original teachings, the psychological teachings, when they were mixed with the mythology, didn't sit quite right with some people, people who consider themselves secular Buddhists. And so that's how secular Buddhism formed. It basically formed, secular Buddhism is basically Buddhism without any gods, without any gurus, without any supernaturalism, without any dogmas. It's peer-reviewed. Secular Buddhists only believe in peer-reviewed scientific information that traces back and can be used with the original system.
Okay.
So
having I mean, there are a lot of people that will claim whether they do meditation. There are Christians and monks that do meditation, and Hindus that will do meditation. There are a lot of different groups that will say, I do meditation, it does have this calming effect, science shows it, but you're not saying that your system is better than theirs when it comes to the benefits of this, except that this is not non-theistic, right?
Yeah, non-theistic, non-supernatural. I mean, the way I would liken this is this, I mean, you can learn a system of meditation that's secular, or you can learn a system of meditation that forces some sort of dogma, mythology, supernaturalism on you. Which one would you rather choose? I mean, why even accept meditation with those additional things? So I think the practices that secular Buddhism upholds is superior to meditation taught by religions and cults and stuff like that.
So secular Buddhism is not a religion, or is it a religion? I figure we get that off the ground.
Yeah. So, no, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's important to define what religion is. I mean, the way I define religion, and please challenge me on this if you disagree, is any organized system of beliefs about the cause, the nature, and the purpose of existence, whose core concepts depend on belief in the supernatural. So secular Buddhism has no core concepts that are beliefs in the supernatural, therefore it is not a religion. Now, traditional Buddhism, I would say, is a supernaturally based system, at least in some points, and it is a religion.
So the Dalai Lama doesn't, the Dalai Lama doesn't speak for you, I mean... doesn't.
Correct.
He's not in charge of you.
Now, we're going to spend most of the show talking about meditation, that end of it. Just during our pre-talk, though, you had also mentioned that secular Buddhists tend to also be secular humanists. So aside from meditation, what else does Buddhism bring to the table when you're talking about secular Buddhism?
Yeah, so secular Buddhism has within it, the Buddha was very secular humanistic. The Buddha was very humanistic. That went all the way to animals and human beings, which secular humanism does. So secular Buddhism has within it tenets that say, look, be a good person. Have a good life. That's really the best way to have a good life, because when you harm other beings, sooner or later something probably will come back to bite you in the butt. So don't harm other beings, don't harm yourself, and do as much good in the world as possible.
That sounds like karma, not the supernatural karma, is it?
Well, the difference with karma is this. Keep in mind, traditional Buddhists do believe in reincarnation and rebirth. Secular Buddhists do not. So secular Buddhists say, just like every other atheist that I've met that's ethical says, look, I want to be good for the sake of being good, rather than because I'm going to get some reward in an afterlife.
Or even a reward in this life. Like, I guess I think what David's trying to draw a distinction, you're not saying that a secular Buddhist would think, well, if I do this good thing here, it's going to circle back and help me in some tangible manner.
But they're just a simple cause and effect kind of thing.
Well, it's I think that's kind of understood too, that if you do bad thing, if you harm other beings, other people, that'll come back to you, but not because of any supernatural reason, but because you get people angry and they do stuff or whatever. But secular Buddhists definitely do it to help others as well. And the meditation, it's also understood that when one starts to meditate, that makes a person less stress inclined. And when you have less stress, you tend to be a little bit less harmful to the people around you.
Maybe can you run through the benefits of meditation as far as you see them?
Yeah, so it's interesting because depending on when a person started to learn about meditation, one's opinion is formed about meditation, kind of based on the era of time that one has started to study about meditation. So let's say 15, 20 years ago, there wasn't very much neuroscientific studies about meditation and what meditation does, how it affects the brain and stuff like that. In the last probably 10 years, neuroscience has really, the technology's gotten better, and several scientists, many scientists have started to do peer-reviewed studies on meditation. So some of the things they found, like for example, there are more than 20 studies done by the University of British Columbia, and they found that on average, meditators that practiced a lot tended to have differences in about 8 different brain areas compared with non-meditators. Now keep this in mind, what peer-reviewed scientific studies are finding is that not only is meditation helpful psychologically, physically, but your brain actually changes. A meditator's brain looks different, is physically different after a period of time than non-meditators. And so there are 8 areas. So for example, there's an increase in the tissue in the area of the brain that maintains attention and controlling impulses. There's thicker tissue in the area responsible for attention, control, and body awareness. There are stronger connections between various brain areas as well. There's a reduction in the region that's linked to negative emotions and sadness and anxiety. And there's also reduced activity in the region responsible for pain.
Okay, and I'm sorry. So what I was going to say is, can you have Buddhism without meditation and vice versa, or they're linked together that they cannot be separated?
Well, for the longest period of time, Buddhist monks would say that Buddhism cannot be separated from meditation, but they would teach that. So traditional Buddhism would hold meditation back only for the professionals, the Buddhist monks. Everyone else was kind of asked to worship and support, and both the community of monks and stuff like that. It's only in modern times, starting with my teacher and some of his teachers, that meditation was allowed to be given and taught to non-monks. And so after so much time, meditation actually, techniques such as mindfulness meditation came on the scene, and then wound up making it to the West. And that was only because meditation was all of a sudden allowed to be taught to non-monks. So, but traditional Buddhism, to be a good Buddhist, whether it's traditional or secular Buddhist, I think it's important to meditate. Yeah.
Now, as far as is there any other way, or are you aware of any other way of achieving the same benefits of meditation without using meditation?
Well, there are basically, let's ask ourselves, what is meditation? Meditation is all. Oh, I'm getting an echo. I'm sorry. That's why I stopped. Meditation is basically an altered state of consciousness. So it's the same thing that we experience if we're walking through the woods, if we're playing tennis, if we're scuba diving, if we're dancing, practicing yoga. So we're able to enter altered states of consciousness when we're doing sex, drugs, and rock and roll. All these things, listening to great music, watching a great movie. It's that state that you kind of go into where you kind of lose yourself, or athletes also call it this zone that you go into. And so it can be achieved without meditation. And there are basically 4 ways to do it. You can do it spontaneously, or you can do it purposefully. I think, based on the studies that I've done, and just the personal research that I've done, that purposeful meditation, doing it purposefully, is superior to having it happen to you spontaneously. And the reason I think it's superior is because it gives you the ability to change the mind, the brain at the deepest levels, as we see with some of these studies. And it gives you access to it puts it in your control, rather than it being just some spontaneous thing. So once you get into purposeful meditation, there's 4 ways to purposefully meditate. You can either meditate through guided meditation. You can meditate, and the advantage of that, it's very easy. Someone else is going to take you into an altered state of consciousness. The danger with that is that someone else is basically controlling you, controlling your mental processes, and can feed information to the mind that could indoctrinate you. A lot of times you have to pay people or pay for video tapes or audio tapes in order to use guided meditation. So I don't really recommend guided meditation. I mean, it's better than nothing, but I would rather do something where I'm in control. The second way to
before you go on, is hypnosis a version of that first, or is that something else?
It is. So guided meditation is straight on hypnosis. What happens when you enter an altered state of consciousness, whether it's through drugs, alcohol, music, whatever. And this is why advertising is such a multi-billion-dollar industry, because it basically puts you in an altered state of consciousness, feeds information into your brain. It's straight out hypnosis.
Are you just describing the voters this past elections? Come on.
Yes. So you have guided meditation, you have auditory meditation, and that's where you basically listen to some tape or audio or music, and it puts you in an altered state of consciousness through auditory channels. And then you have visual meditation. It does that visually. Now, the reason I don't like these 2 types of methods is these 2 types of methods also have been used throughout time by religion and cults to indoctrinate people. I mean, think about what happens when you go to a church or a temple. You get all these visual, auditory things that basically put you in an altered state, and then the priest or the whatever it is, the leader of that religion, pumps information into your brain and indoctrinates you full of information. So I would say, if you're going to practice meditation, don't practice the first 3. The 4th type of meditation is mindfulness or kinesthetic meditation. And what this does is it allows you to use neutral objects of meditation to put you in an altered state, such as breath or awareness of the body, or in cases of Tai Chi or other types of where you're using movement. And I'm not as much for like Tai Chi and movement, because you can't do it for long enough. And you still have to kind of use the body. So I prefer straight-on mindfulness meditation. And, meditation also has the benefits of basically alleviating stress and of giving insights. You know how sometimes you're in the shower and you get these insights and you're like, I got to write this down. Well, meditation kind of gives you those insights too. So that's another benefit to meditation. But I think the most important benefit to meditation, and I experienced this even today. And I'll tell you how. But meditation, let's face it, the everyday moment kind of sucks. If you're not really trained to see it properly, if you don't train yourself to see the moment properly, it can be painful. And that's why we love our distractions from the moment, from reality, we love to do anything but experience the moment. And that leads down a lot of paths that aren't good for us and other people. And so today I was being interviewed for the movie Godless, and the movie was trying to show that basically atheists can also be secularly spiritual, and that's even superior to the spirituality that religions experience, because religions give you that altered state of consciousness along with indoctrination and mythology. And I was sitting there on Stone Mountain, we were filming, and I just realized, every single moment is just so beautiful, and we don't really need anything else except for if we're used to distracting ourselves from the moment. So meditation is very helpful with this as well.
So go ahead.
I was just going to jump in and say that. So my true love in life, other than activism, is writing. And I completely identify, like, with what you said. If you're in the shower or sometimes when you fall asleep and you're working on some creative solution to a problem in the book, and it's often in those times when you're not just busy trying to get work done that the answer comes from you. Most of the stuff going on in our head is subconscious, and I guess part of this is to help bring that into consciousness or give you that opportunity. So I find that very interesting. We've also had Andy Thompson on the show a few times, and he talks about how the early religions all stumbled upon song, dance, and trance, and how through repetitive muscular motions, from contact, putting a hand on somebody, there's a variety of things that release different neurochemicals that alter the state of consciousness in the very way that you're talking about doing it mindfully. Before we forget to this, you've also talked about some of the risks of meditation or the downsides.
Before we go on. Before we go on, I'd really like to mention, that real quick, the whole dance and stuff like that too. Basically, dance and that kind of meditation, or that kind of trance state, or that kind of altered state of consciousness, is the kinesthetic type of meditation that I mentioned. And the reason it's inferior, not inferior in any kind of deep way, but just it's not as superior as mindfulness, for example, is because you can't really do it for a very, very, very long time. Because your body, you can't dance for a long time. Most people can't dance for a very long time. And also you need to be able to dance. You're not all people are able to dance. Not all people even have, the ability to dance. So if you can learn how to meditate using some sort of a mindfulness type system, then basically you can have that kind of shower experience at will, no matter where you find yourself. Even if you get, even if you're confined, and you're in some space where all you have is, or even if you get so sick that all you have is your mind, your brain. And you don't have use of any other faculties. The only time it wouldn't work is if you completely lost your mind, in which case it probably wouldn't matter anyway, right?
Well, now you know it won't matter to you.
Wait a second. Thank you, David.
So, how long does it take to achieve that kind of level where you can say, yep, I'm meditating and it's giving me this benefit? And it also kind of reminded me of something when I was growing up in the 80s, that of something called biofeedback, where people were connecting themselves and listening to their heart, listening to their all of this, and be able to lower it by having that biofeedback and listening to itself. Any relation in all of that? And again, do I have to try for 6 years before I'm actually able to say, yep, I can see the benefits now and I feel like I'm doing it right? Or if you do it wrong, are you doing it wrong forever?
Well, so first of all, I think it's important to learn a proper meditation technique, and this also goes into the dangers of meditation that I would like to answer your question on that as well. But so it's important to learn a proper meditation technique, and then once you learn, you get the basics. It's important to have access to a teacher. But I'm totally against gurus, and I use this to kind of symbolize that with my last name, Gura. The A kind of stands for anti-guru, because I'm totally against any system where some other human being basically kind of runs your life and becomes some kind of the epitome of something, and you just defer to them to everything. I'm such a believer in self-will and not being, overcome by some other human being. So it's important to find those two things. But once you do, and you kind of know you're on the right track, like I would never recommend anyone learn meditation from a video or, I think the only way to properly learn a meditation is to go to a 10-day course and be immersed in it. And this is why, because meditation is like exercise. Like physical exercise. So a lot of people say, well, maybe I'll just try meditation and see if I like it. And then they sit down for 10, 15 minutes, things start coming up and they go, it's not for me. So the reason things start coming up is because most of our lives, what we've done is we've distracted ourselves from our internal psyche, and we've distracted ourselves with external things. Meditation kind of self-forces you to sit there and to concentrate and to see reality for what it is right now. Whether it's psychological stuff coming up, or stuff from the environment and stuff that may have happened yesterday or last week, or that you think may happen. So when this stuff comes up, this is tough stuff to deal with. That's the reason most people are distracting themselves with drugs, sex, alcohol, everything else, TV, iPod, everything imaginable. But
wait a minute. Are you saying that if I start doing this, which I was now considering, I'm not going to be able to do drugs, rock and roll, or anything else?
I think those things become better after you learn.
Oh, okay. Now we're talking.
because you actually feel the reality of the moment much better than you did before. But let's face it. Meditation can be. I've actually had. I've gone to meditation courses where I've met like soldiers, like Israeli soldiers that just came back from boot camp, and they said, this was more difficult than boot camp in Israel, which is one of the most difficult boot camps probably in the world, right? Because you're sitting here and you're facing that psyche, and just like in prisons, and this is torture. Of course it's totally bad, but one of the worst punishments you can give a prisoner is to put them in solitary confinement when they're stuck with themselves, right? And what does that tell us about our own minds if that's the worst thing that can happen to us? And of course, prisons use all sorts of techniques that are torture, and but I'm just using this as a wide example, right?
Mm-hmm. So Mark, what about the argument that our brains have evolved to serve us and help us reproduce? So if we feel this constant agitation or irritation or whatever it is that's bothering us, that might spur us on to a useful action. Is there any risk that meditation helps you become at peace with everything and it gets rid of that activist drive? You're obviously still quite the activist. So just do you find that this ever does sublimate that drive and you don't act on it, or does it just help you channel your resources more efficiently?
I think you said it. That last statement was right on. I'm more active than I've ever been ever in my life, and I've been meditating for over 20 years, and I don't find myself slowing down. I find myself becoming more engaged, more passionate in helping people and organizations. Because I think what meditation does is it helps you focus on those things that you feel are the most important. And they help you to let go of those things that aren't really as important as they should be. So I'm not playing video games. I'm not screwing around doing this or that like I maybe did in my teenage years. I'm just pure. Every single minute of the day is utilized for something that I deem important. And I don't think I could do it without the meditation.
Mark, do you think that other religions would see the secular, well, first I'll object to the secular word, I'm sure, but also the word Buddhism, but can you see a Catholic or a Jewish or Pentecostal or whatever practicing secular Buddhism without having to abandon their religion?
Well, here's what makes me angry, okay? Back, 20 years ago when I started to meditate, using the secular Buddhist systems, and my teacher was S.N. Goenka. He basically he's probably the primary person that introduced mindfulness to the West. I had just met Mother Teresa, and I go to this Buddhist meditation center. Well, it's not really Buddhist; it's more secular. It's not. So here I am, practicing this technique, learning it, and then I see nuns, Mother Teresa's nuns, learning this meditation technique. And then years later, when I moved to Colorado, there's this church that's practicing mindfulness meditation, but they don't call it mindfulness meditation. They've stolen the technique, and then now it's like Christian mindfulness. And they're using it, and they're saying, yes, and this comes from God, you know? And so this is one of the things that makes a secular Buddhist be a secular Buddhist, because secular Buddhism attributes the technique properly to the person that created it, which is Siddhartha Gautama, and also introduces the fact that anything we believe should be peer-reviewed, scientific, reason-based, non-supernatural. So if you learn meditation from any other source, you can't be guaranteed that you're not learning, you know, some sort of, it's not getting mixed with some sort of religion or mythology or cultism.
I think you touched on this a little, but I want you to make it explicit. When you were talking about the potential harms or risks of meditation and how religion can prey on that, can you, what does that altered state put you into, and how do religions exploit that?
Yeah. So, you know, first of all, you know, what happens is a person, meditation's it's talked about a lot lately, right? And it's even mindfulness, right? And people decide at some point, you know, yeah, I want to learn meditation. I see the benefits. I see the scientific benefits. So that usually most people, and, you know, wind up just choosing some random center, probably the closest center to them. And without truly understanding the 4 different types of meditations that I talked about, without understanding the all the things about meditation, without even knowing that secular Buddhism exists, that there are techniques that are secular, and once a person starts meditating, it's really easy to just have vested interest in the time and money spent, you know, at that center. And then when the people that teach you that meditation, when they introduce something wacky, it's kind of easy to just go, it's okay, I'll just ignore and some of them actually say, I'll just ignore all the crazy stuff that we're teaching you, but, you know, and then you wind up, you know, becoming an adherent to some system that's just wooey, mythological, you know, supernatural based. But besides that, I mean, meditation can release anxiety, grief, fear, anger, emotional, mental blockages, you know, trauma from the past, maybe even made up trauma, you know, it can create trauma. So it's important to be able to learn a system that helps you to deal with those things, and not in a supernatural way. So you're not giving credit to some made up deity, you know, but it can also, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you've also told me that it puts you in a very suggestible frame of mind. And that's obviously a setup for disaster in a religious context.
Yeah, and, you know, keep this in mind, though. Altered state of consciousness, trance state, you know, you can be put in that state by anything such as music, movies, the internet, you know, sex, drugs, rock and roll. So we go in and out of altered states of consciousness every single day. And the reason advertising works so well is it puts you in an altered state of consciousness and it pumps messages into your brain, right? So one of the things that I've found is when I don't meditate, or when I didn't meditate, those messages would just kind of stay in my brain, right? And what happens with meditation is when I'm meditating, some of these things that I learned that I was indoctrinated with throughout the day tend to come up, and I'm like, wait a minute, this thought almost implanted itself in my mind. I started to almost like feel comfortable with it, and I see, you know, and I'm able to reason and catch some of the stuff that we're getting pumped with. So meditation, I think, is almost a decontaminant, almost an anti-indoctrination tool. And, you know, I find that people who use meditation properly kind of tend to become more reason-based, you know, unless they're continuously being indoctrinated by religion or by some cult or mythology, which makes them more. But the other thing that meditation can produce is uncomfortable feelings and sensations. So it's important to have a technique that deals with that. It can also give you like panic attacks or tension, or you can experience boredom or a feeling of spaced out or a craving for meditation. So again, proper techniques help you to deal with that. And also, you know, the indoctrination part, I mean, that's bar none the biggest reason to use a secular meditation technique and not to learn meditation from your local church.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, I'm going to be giving this a try and see how it works. And like you said, it probably takes time. My biggest concern is that right now I sit in a chair for 5 seconds and I'm out like a light. You know, I fall asleep. So it seems like if I disengage my brain says, oh, it must be time to go to sleep. And that's it. Does that ever happen to you? Or, you know, do you see that happening to other newbies? Or What's your
Yeah,
take on it?
you know what that probably means, David?
That I'm damn tired.
Exactly. You're not getting enough sleep, my brother.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But that's another reason why I think it's important to go to a 10-day course to learn meditation, because you're going to be in an environment where you don't have any responsibilities other than to learn meditation. And so you're going to get enough rest. There are times when you go to bed and stuff like that. So you're going to catch up on your sleep during that time. And then when you fall asleep at that point, when you fall asleep and you've already had enough sleep, what that usually means is that your brain is kind of shutting down a little bit because it's not used to all the new information that you're getting from meditation, because you're not used to dealing with that information when you're not meditating. You're usually diverting your attention from that information. So I've seen people start to meditate. Go ahead.
A 10-day course you mentioned a minute ago, after you come out of that, you're pretty much all set.
I think after you come out of all that, you have a basic grounding in meditation, and that's when the real work starts.
So, Mark, do you have a sense, is the science for meditation in its infancy, or is there so much evidence out there already that everything feels very secure? I know Phil Torres, we're going to hope to get on to talk about this at some point to go into some of the science, but how far along is neuroscience in documenting some of the benefits that are attributed to meditation?
Well, you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't neuroscience in its infancy?
I think it is. And that's sort of what I'm asking. Is this just fMRI based? Or, I have not read the literature. I'm very interested in the technique, but I'd also want to know how secure the footing is at this point.
Well, from everything that we can tell, and these are falsifiable studies, those benefits that I mentioned are there. And, I'm sure there are different organizations and people who are trying to shoot holes through the studies that have been put out, and vice versa, and there are people promoting the studies. I'm not a scientist. Based on my understanding, it's pretty solid, and I haven't ever met a neuroscientist that said no, these studies are bogus or anything like that. So, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, it is pretty solid. One thing that I would like to say though is, people in the atheist community who started to learn about meditation 20 years ago, when those neuroscientific studies weren't around, a lot of times they've come to the conclusion that meditation's bogus because 20 years ago those neuroscientific studies weren't there. And so they basically saw something that's different, and they said, this is too ooey for me. And maybe they didn't even know about secular methods of meditation, because at that time things like transcendental meditation was really popular, and that's kind of wooey, and things like that. So a lot of people in our community learned about meditation when there wasn't the science behind it, and have made up their mind, and now even when they see the science, they go, no, meditation just sucks, I hate it, and whatever. Yeah, I mean, I'd say
Sam Harris is obviously very devoted to critical thinking, and he's a big proponent of meditation. And Phil Torres, I got the sense just from our brief talk with him that there was a lot of good evidence. So I'm sort of very interested in following this.
Although I think Phil is not a Buddhist.
But I think it's just the meditation techniques. I think he said there's a lot of good scientific evidence.
So I have a...
and what really is the difference between being a meditator and being a Buddhist? I mean, basically, I think being a secular Buddhist, if you're using a meditation technique that was created by Siddhartha Gautama, and it was created for the purpose of bringing a less stressful life to you, and if you don't say, well, I'm a Buddhist at least in the sense that I practice a Buddhist meditation technique, then you're kind of plagiarizing. Because you're using, it would be kind of like, Rob created or David created a meditation technique, and I'm just going to be like, you know what? I don't want to give David credit for that. I'm just going to call it, meditation, and,
Well, Mark, let me tell you something. I was surprised that you were surprised that the church had stolen that. I mean, look at all the holidays, the Christmas, all of that. I mean, that's sort of what they do, They appropriate and then they give credit to Jesus or something. I'm sure they'll argue that, on the Mount of Olives, it was meditation. In fact, I have my grandmother's house had a picture of Jesus praying at the Mount of Olives like this, and he was meditating. So, but let me ask you something.
Hold on, and I'm
yeah.
surprised you were going to give David credit, because I'm the Hispanic American Free Thinker president of the day, so I would like to take whatever credit you were giving him. Go ahead.
That's right. And you're really earning your pay today.
Thank you.
For sure. So for me, I'm a great admirer of historical figures, and Benjamin Franklin was a great historical figure. But one of the things that I've enjoyed the most about finding about Benjamin Franklin is how much of a human he was. He had his affairs. He liked the chubby women. He was criticized by some of his fellow people, saying that early to bed, early to rise makes it, that was BS. That he got up at 10 o'clock in the morning every day, and so forth. With the Buddha, is there anything that you have found out that he was wrong about, or that made him, that he was just mistaken, that shows basically he was a fallible human being like anyone else? Or, because part of what a lot of people feel is that, hey, everyone treats the Buddha as if he was Jesus, no mistakes, he was not human, he was just perfect the whole time. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, and first of all, Benjamin Franklin's one of my heroes too. So I just love reading about his life and the things he said and stuff like that. So unfortunately, with Buddhism, because Buddhism, was developed 2,500 years ago, and then it went to these other countries where it got mixed with the local traditions and the cultures, and those traditions all had gods and deities that the Buddha was competing with. These religions, traditional Buddhism has made Buddha a perfect being. He's the definition of perfection if you look in a traditional Buddhist dictionary, if there was such a thing. So unfortunately, we don't have very much information from the past as to what he may have done that may have been just human. I would be really surprised if there weren't a lot of human things. Now, one thing that one can extrapolate from the histories of the Buddha is, he did leave his family, his wife and his child, to go on this search for, finding himself, and then he became enlightened, which means really, a psychological state of being that's, he's able to access inner peace at will and stuff like that. So he did leave his family, and that can be considered maybe not cool. But then some people try to make the argument that and he came back, by the way, to his family, and then the technique benefited his family and his children and stuff like that. But some people
Mark, we're running out of time. I have one question I want to get in. David has made one quick one.
So we say it's 25. And we got 30 seconds to answer this. 2,500 years ago, was he an actual historical figure? How do we know he actually did exist?
Well, from what we know, there are some things to point to that fact, but we don't know for sure. There are a lot of historical figures that we can't 100% know that they were historical figures. So whether he's a historical figure or not doesn't matter to secular Buddhists, because we're not really about worshiping the guy anyway. We'll give him credit, but it's all about science-based, peer-reviewed, non-supernatural.
Let me cut you off and make that in maybe 15 seconds. Why is it really important for the atheist community to get behind secular Buddhism? What do they bring to the table potentially for our community?
Gosh, I wish we had more time. Okay, so basically, what happens is religion sells us, sells people on altruism. It sells people on community. It sells people on basically doing great works. But the one thing it doesn't have is some sort of a psychological technique.
Okay, well, we're going to have...
Religion has a psychological technique, but atheism doesn't.